Imagine that your life's work, passion, and vocation would bring inspiration and joy to hundreds of parishioners each week. Coming right up, you'll meet an artist who does that in this month's edition of FaithWorks. Today our guest is an artist, Donna Locati. Her work is seen by many who are parishioners at our parish, St. Paul Catholic Newman Center in Fresno. But her life's work, 50 years, is going to be shared with you today, and it's my joy to introduce you to Donna Locati, my friend. Donna, it's so good to have you here today to talk about your faith as it comes through your art. But I think your family has to be talked about first. They gave you some faith, they gave you your life. Tell us about your family as it influenced your art and your faith.
Well, my family, I was just so fortunate to have a wonderful, stable family. My mother was from an all-Irish background, and she was born in Shaver when there was a mill pond there, and her dad had a little shake and shingle mill. And she got to come down and board and go to St. John's High School. She got a really good education. She went on to nursing school and was a nurse for a little while. My dad came from a family, my grandfather on that side came from Mexico as a child. From Spain to Mexico, from Italy to Spain to Mexico, and they were in Guanajuato and were involved in the mint there, the silver mines. So the two children were sent to California when the revolution took place because they were on the wrong side, and they never went home. And so then he married a San Francisco woman from a very English-looking line. And so I have a really mixed background, and my dad went to Berkeley, and he had a really good classic education, and he was a journalism major, and he worked for the Fresno Bee for many, many years. My sister, my older sister, a year older, is a very leader type of person. I was kind of a crybaby and the behind-the-scenes person. And then my brother, of course, Tom Castellazzo, came next, and he's wonderful. And then a little sister. And when after that little sister was born, my dad, who was not a Catholic in the early years, became a very, very strong Catholic.
Wow.
And so our lives changed. I had been in public school and stayed there, and so had Mona. But the two, Tom and Mary, started from St. Teresa's and went on through. And but when it came to change to high school, Mona and I both went to San Joaquin Memorial.
How did your art start? Was it at San Joaquin Memorial doing some of those costumes and some of those things for the yearbook, or what?
No, really I always did artwork. And color and design were always very important to me. I could not stand the way our car looked. There was just something at the outside of the car. And there were certain colors I just really, I was very opinionated. And so going into high school from public school was big change. And it was kind of a shocking change, even though, I'd always gone to church and gone to catechism in a garage to the Holy Family nuns. So when then I went to Memorial, I was just kind of taken in by a person who became my friend and still is, Joanne Carruthers Longacre, and she was very much of a leader type, and she took me into the St. Teresa's group. And, Memorial feeds from different schools. So I got to do posters, things like that. Didn't do costume or anything like that at that time. But I always could do artwork. There was Sister Paraclita there was that one art class there. And I worked on the paper a little bit. I did a couple of drawings for the red and blue, and just carried on that way, always interested in art. And I did have private art lessons that I could walk to, and it was in the neighborhood. And then I went to Fresno State.
What happened for you artistically at Fresno State?
Well, the art department was still on the old campus. They were moving. And so I was now separated from my Catholic friends, my new college friends were art people. And most of those people that I had known and been close to were either to another school, or if they're at Fresno State, they were education majors, and they weren't around, And there were a lot of veterans there then, and they were the people taking center stage, and Corky Normart was one of them, for instance.
Nice.
Yeah. So I took pottery, which was really sculpture, and I took photography, which I wasn't good at. I did get a decent grade because I cleaned up the darkroom for her. And then Jane Gale, my watercolor teacher, was that's where I was going. I just fell in love with watercolor, which of course I'd always done, but I didn't. For instance, we did movement like this with a brush and made an O for days, so that the training was good, And I took very few commercial art classes. I was a lit minor, English lit minor. I took a Spanish class, which he seemed to think that I needed, because of my name, that I needed to, and background, I needed to better than I was doing, But I was really just a college student, and interested in social life. And
now, we did see some pieces at your home from that time, from way back. You want to tell us about that little sculpture?
Okay. That was Mr. O'Dorfer's class. And that was, the thing you saw was 3 points of contact. That was the only instruction I had. I mean, that was the requirement. You had to make something with 3 points of contact, so it's a kneeling figure. But it wasn't necessarily, in my mind, religious at that time. Yeah. So.
What happened in 1961? It seems like a lot of things happened for you back in that year. You want to tell us a little bit?
Well, in 1961, I went on to, well, first of all, when I finished college, I really wasn't prepared for the commercial world. And so then I got a job at the welfare department as a social worker for 2 years, and lived off my parents and so forth, and saved my money, and I went to Chenard in LA. And that school is now part of Cal Arts. It was Disney bought it, but he was very much had been a silent partner for a long time. I was sent there by Jane Gale, who was my watercolor teacher, because before that, going back a bit, she had sent me. I had too many art classes. It wasn't working on my the classes that you're supposed to have. So she sent me to the theater department, and in the theater department, I fell in love with costume design. And this is when you truly, that's the reason for the angels, being colorful.
Wow.
So anyway, I did that, and Jan Pratt, and then Brian later, what's her name, was my teacher. And then Jane Gale wanted me to go to Chenard because Chenard was doing things for theater, like they had a huge animation department, and they had a costume department, and fashion design, and so forth. So I went there for a year. I met my husband, who was living in nearby in another boarding house, and then we decided to marry, and so we tried Fresno. We came to Fresno, and when we got here, then after we got married, Jan Pratt still asked me to substitute for her teaching costume design at Fresno State.
Ah, yeah.
So I did that for the 1 half sabbatical semester. Okay, then after Christopher was born, that's my oldest child, we decided to move back to LA. My husband had worked for the LA Times and he wanted to go back there. And so we went back. And we lived in North Hollywood and downtown in LA twice and out in Van Nuys, and then we moved to San Francisco. But all that time I was doing watercolors, and I was doing watercolors of street scenes, and it was expensive. We'd moved, we had a baby, and I was painting at night, and I was using very good paper. I had a piece of paper to the side, which was the same good paper, and I would try little splotches of color there, you know, to see what I was getting the right mix of colors. And my husband Warren complained that I was wasting good paper because, you know, it was just one of those. It wasn't a serious complaint, but it was kind of a question. So I thought, yeah, that's true. So I had been using ink for quite a long while with watercolor after taking a class from Richard Yip. And so I started taking the ink and making little animals out of it. Well, one time after we came back to Fresno, I put one of those in the fair. It started getting popular, and so I did a lot of those animals in addition to my Victorians and other street scenes and so forth. And those animals became something else later, something more, but that was the start, and which makes me think one thing leads to another.
Which is exactly what we're going to see in the second half of the program coming up right after the break. We're going to see how things that began a long time ago in Donna's life become works of art later that you can see today. We'll take our break. We'll be back in 1 minute, so please stay tuned.
KNXT thanks all its loyal viewers and respected businesses who have supported your Catholic television station. Now you can support KNXT with program underwriting by having your name, your company's name, or organization associated with your favorite program. Detailed information about you or your company will appear before and after each program or day part you select. Keep the quality and spiritual message alive and make a difference. Call 559-488-7440 today or go online at knxt.tv to find out more about program underwriting on KNXT.
Hello again and welcome back to FaithWorks. Donna has gotten us up to the point of around 1961, 62, 63, and that's the Vatican Council. The church did a tremendous reform of itself, and I'm wondering where anything from the Vatican Council has influenced you in your art personally or professionally, such as works you've done, and then meeting Sergio Negro, and then all your career in art. Where would you like to tell us about that?
You know, I remember before Vatican II, I think, you know, when you're a child, you think you're religious, but really it's somebody else's religion. And you're just you're going through what you need to do, you know, and especially if you don't go to Catholic school, and really get the immersion, you know. And so I was always trying to do the right things and so forth, and sometimes I did the wrong thing, and I'd be having to do that over.
Confession.
Yeah, that's what confession's for. So anyway, then when Vatican II came, I was just kind of in my own life and not paying too much attention. And then when my children were born, they and were beginning to be old enough to go to whatever, I don't know if it was CCD or whatever it was. They did not go to Catholic school. We just, money was not a really plentiful thing. I kind of had a negative attitude about love and balloons, just kind of not learning all the strict rules and so forth that I was brought up with. And but then I began to see the point of it, and I began to feel freer. And then Father Negro came into life. I should go back and say that I really have a big Catholic background, because my cousin Todd Brown went to the seminary here at 13. And so I knew seminarians that would come from the coast. It was in Monterey. Was
Monterey,
part of
Fresno.
it was part of the same diocese at that time. So they would come to our house on visiting day, and my folks would fix them a meal. And so I knew all these people. I went to camp. I was a camp counselor at Santa Teresita, and my sister Mona became a nun at 19. A sister of St. Joseph of Carondelet. So there was all that, and then there was Vatican II. Then there was Father Negro, and we went to, he had Newman Club when I was in college, and so I knew him from that, and he used to come to my painting shows and so forth. So then he sort of asked me in to be working for the church forever. Newman Center was just the perfect Vatican II place. And it was very plain. There were some beautiful banners that were done by women who didn't give their names, and they were much more holy than I am. So anyway, there were those there, but I didn't go there. I went to St. Anthony's, and then later I moved, my children and I moved over there. My husband was not a Catholic, and so Father Negro, in '85, when Jane Worsley's daughter was getting married, she wanted to do something for the church and do a decorative thing, and he said, Father Negro said, ask Donna. That was the very beginning. So the first thing were the stretched watercolor paper hoops that have fluted edges and birds and so forth. And from then on, it was just, I did the Alleluia banners, which were the same watercolor stretched thing. I don't think we have pictures, And then the angel story is kind of interesting. Anyway, I was so freed up by Vatican II, and became more interested in the readings and so forth, and the daily readings and so forth. So then my daughter Francesca was home, and we decided to do Renaissance Fair. So I took some watercolors that will never make it to a frame, and soaked them down, and I formed them with a head, and I put them on garden sticks in the yard, and it rained, and then it dried, and it was hot again. It was like September, and I thought I was making kings or something. I knew I had to make some three-dimensional figures for the Renaissance Fair. But then they dried, and they went like that, and I thought, oh yeah, angels. That's the beginning. And then Father Negro saw them at the Renaissance Fair, and as they say, the rest is history.
A patron of the arts, Father Negro.
Oh yeah.
Tell us about your friend Sharon Young. We have a work that you did with Sharon.
Yeah, wonderful. Father Negro wanted to do a book of his homilies, and so while he was alive, we did one, and he asked me to do prints in it because I do etchings, and so we used those in the book, and then Sharon Young was the editor of the next book. After he died, and she was the editor of that one, but then after he died, we did 3 more books, and Sharon and I worked together on those. She was the editor and I was the illustrator. Well, we enjoyed that so much that we then did that.
The Abundant Harvest.
Abundant Harvest, which is about the vineyard market at Blackstone and Shaw, which is Saturday morning and Wednesday afternoon. And so we worked on that. I drew and painted, and she interviewed, and then she also got recipes. She tested all the recipes. We spent a lot of time together getting it right, and going up to the printers who had it listed as a cookbook. And so that was a wonderful thing.
Now, another form of art, we did go to your studios. We saw 2 different studios that were reconverted rooms. Then you led us to a 3rd room where you had your etching press. Introduce us to that part of your life.
Okay, so when I was in my 40s, a friend of mine, Donna Locati, said we have to go try printing. So we went to a night class. I fell in love with it. Printing has something that just brings more of your subconscious up than anything I was doing before. I gave up doing Victorians, and I started doing lighter weight things, and I did a lot of animals for one thing, and the animals, the pig in particular, got me an entrance to residencies at the Art Museum.
Nice.
So then I was printing there for 10 years, and we all love just sitting and rubbing our plates together. You have to get a lot of the ink off before you print, but you use a metal plate that's been etched in acid. And so we got just to feeling like we wanted to stay together, so we formed the Fresno Printmakers Guild, which is more than 25 years old now, and we show once a year.
Well, besides your printing group, you also have other friends that still weekly are at your home. Tell us about how your work continues through your good friends.
Yeah, well, okay, well, after Warren died, he had the room full of antiques, and those went back east to my son Michael, who sells that sort of thing. And then the whole place was made into a studio, and I invited people to come and do what's called quillery. And this was, we're going on 9 years,
Wow.
and they've come over and made the hoops that you see at Newman Center, which are little pieces of paper that are just glued together. It's been wonderful for them. I've made friends. They have a sense of ownership in the church with something of theirs hanging on the wall. And it's just, and I hope more people will do it, and I hope that it could be like students or younger people. You know, I'd be willing to do some of that. The trouble is, it's messy, there's a lot of storage.
But to be in that studio, Donna, it was such a joy to walk in and see someone's home be a true studio, and then to find that there's 3 rooms that are your art center. Tell us a little bit about maybe some of the conditions that make you do a certain type of art at a certain time of year, or with certain limitations, like watercolors. You've got some other things you do, paper sculpture, ink prints, and monotypes, depending on conditions.
All right, I am a paper artist, but almost every paper thing includes water. And all this drought that we're in, water is so precious, and to fill a whole bathtub with water to soak a paper for an angel, big angel, I'm hesitant to do it. You know, I don't feel, I'll do it, but I'm not as happy about it as I would be if we had plenty of water. It just seems, so water and the air are so influential for paper works, because paper works are more delicate, they're more ephemeral. And you always have to wash your brushes, and you have to soak your paper, and there's a lot of cleanup. The atmosphere is important. So pray for rain.
We are praying for rain, and we're also letting people know there's places you can see some of Donna's art. Besides the Newman Center, there are some other churches, St. Anthony's and St. Therese. Tell us what they'll see at the Newman Center and what they'll see at the other churches.
Well, they probably won't see anything at the other churches now. I did some, I started doing work per se for the church with my sister Mona, a friend of hers, another sister, Sister Kathleen Meyer. We started making banners at St. Teresa's. I lived in that parish for 2 years when we came back from San Francisco. And then we tried doing them at St. Anthony's too, but not terribly successful. They didn't really need anything, you know. Go to Newman Center and it's like a blank wall, you know. So it's I mean, it wasn't, you know, there's the beautiful window. You always have to deal.
Oh yeah, the windows you have.
The window, you always have to deal with the window because it's so colorful and so beautiful. And so that's why a lot of it is there.
We want to remind people that all the art that we show you today is copyright protected, but if they want to be in touch with you, Donna, what should they do?
Well, I don't have a computer. I think they would just have to phone me, 559-439-2170, and make an appointment or meet me at the Newman Center to show them or generally get to know them.
We've got about a minute, Donna, and I'm wondering if there's something we didn't get to talk about enough, something about a piece of work that we could show. How would you like to conclude the program?
Well, here's a little picture that I did for my sister Mona, who also has a book about her life. Mona has a great sense of humor. The undertitle is Reflections of a Non-Entity. So it's the story of her life. So anyway, I did this little picture. Well, I've just done a picture for Theodore Kuchar, who's leaving.
We want to thank you not only for doing this interview, but for a lifetime of art that is not only enriching those who might see it in your home. If you ever get a chance to make this appointment with Donna, to do some artwork with her, but to be at the Newman Center, which the environment that is created for our Sunday worship is always enhanced by the different art forms that Donna creates. Donna and her team of friends, sometimes working together on beautiful projects. It's important in our Catholic faith to see our mysteries represented concretely, beautifully, artistically. And it's people like Donna Locati who do this for us. Thank you, Donna. God bless.
Bless you.